All right, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 p.m. on December 14th of the year 2021. We welcome you to the American Forks City Council meeting this evening. We will begin with a public hearing. This is to receive public comments regarding amendments to the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022 city budget. Anybody that would like to make a comment, if you'd come forth to the mic, we would ask you to state your name, and we would love to hear from you. So we'll open that up to a public hearing, I guess I should say, public hearing. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and we will move on to the agenda as outlined. We will begin with a public pledge of allegiance, followed by invocation by Councilmember Carroll, after which I will conduct the roll call. If everybody please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee this day for all that Thou hast given to us. We're grateful for our many blessings. We're grateful for the ability we have to live in this country, to govern ourselves. And please bless us this day that we will have safety and that we will have understanding. Please bless us that we will remember those who we are serving. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you for that prayer. We now conduct the roll call. Councilmember Hunter.
Here.
Councilmember Shelton.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor. Here. We'll now move on to the item number 2, which is a public comment period. And anybody that would like to address the mayor, the council, or our senior staff, this is the time to do that. We'd ask you to come forward at this time and then keep your remarks brief, 2 to 3 minutes if possible, and state your name. We'd ask you to come forward at this time. Seeing none, we will close the public comment period, and we'll move on to item number 3 of the regular session, which is the city administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got a couple things. Our recreation department. I don't know why this on. It's off. There we go. Thanks, George, back there, if you're fixing it for me. Just a couple things. Our recreation department's been really, really busy with all of the basketball teams that are playing. They're going to take a little break during Christmas, and then they'll be back at it. But during the break, we would invite those people who want to visit the fitness center and the pool. There's a new water feature at the swimming pool, and it's really exciting, and it will test your endurance. And so it's a lot of fun, and it's something that would be a fun activity, I think, for people over the break. So there's currently a community survey that is being given for our residents to take an annual survey like we have in the past, asking questions about the city and about priorities and about issues that our residents are concerned about. We would invite everyone to take that survey as well. I want to put a little...
David,
Yes.
if I may,
Sir.
how is that being distributed, or how did they get access? Because in the past, I think it was mailed out, or at least the notice was in different ways. Just wondering.
Yeah, so that's... I don't know what this is on and off. That is an electronic survey, and we have not mailed them out this year. I'm looking at Camden to make sure that I'm giving you the right information. So they were not mailed out this year, but it is electronic. It's on our website and also on our social media pages. There's a link that our residents can go take.
In lieu of the survey itself, which we typically mailed out, we did mail out a 1/3 cutout asking them to go take the survey, giving them the URL address and a QR code to be able to take it electronically. But we didn't give them the physical survey itself.
Was that in the last bill, when you say you mailed it out?
Yeah, it went out when the newsletter went out. We also had a map of the parade route, and then there should have been a 1/3 cutout for the survey. Did you not see that? Did that not?
I don't remember seeing it, no, but that's okay. I do
Okay.
remember.
I can go.
I understand. I
can
do
go
remember
verify
seeing
that
the
was-
map of the Santa route, but I don't remember.
But not the other one?
So, that's okay.
Okay.
We'll follow up on that one, but it is available online, and there's links on our website and on social media as well. I just want to ask our community and all of us to be more aware of our public safety officers when they're out on the road. We have had multiple vehicles get rear-ended or hit by other cars. There's been times where our officers don't feel safe as they're doing their job out on the road. And my sincere prayer is that our public safety officers are safe while they're doing their job. And we've had a couple of instances where they've been in harm's way because people aren't paying attention, or they're just not aware of our officers. And so I would just ask that we all take a little breather and a little time. It's getting dark sooner. It's the weather can be bad. Let's just slow it down and be aware of our surroundings, and especially our public safety officers. So that's just a request for our city as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Appreciate it. We'll now move on to council reports, and I'll start with Council Member Hunter.
Thank you, Mayor. I bring the thanks of the Parks and Trails Committee for the continued effort in closing the deal on the south side of the freeway. They're really excited with that, and we've had some really good meetings, and understand that that's a big step in the development of the parks and trails for our city. Like they should. They're not content with that by any stretch, but they are very gracious for that. So I know there's going to be several people that will talk about the various different holiday celebrations and things like that, but I do want to mention the ones for the library, that rotunda. Excuse me, if you've tried to go to any of those, you might as well just walk there, because there's no parking either at junior high from last night or the various ones that have been Saturday. There was a 4-person piano quartet. Just pretty much standing room only. You couldn't find a place to park. So anyway, just really excited and appreciate what the library does to create that sense of community. So outside of that, thank you for the Friday night, the employee celebration and party. It was fun to everybody. So anyway, that's my report.
Thank you for that report. Council Member Shelton.
You guys echo, great job. The employee that's awesome. When we started back in 2011, there wasn't a thing called an employee party, so I'm glad to see that continues. And especially my thanks to Ken today, and I really do believe culture is going to play an even bigger role going forward as you look to attract quality talent and showing that appreciation in multiple ways, not just through compensation, is a great thing. I really appreciate the efforts that were made there. The other item I had just to report back on is we did receive the resignation of our director at dispatch. He's going to UCA, which he's going to be in charge of the implementation of all of the hand radios that are being upgraded and working throughout the state, finding funding and all that good stuff. I built a pretty good relationship with Michael over that time period, and think that if we have issues or trouble, we have someone that we know up there to be able to get in touch with, and is kind of over that. that only gave us about 2 weeks' notice, so it's about a 2 to 3 month search to be able to find someone, so they did appoint an interim director. We ended up going with the individual that used to be the director for Pleasant Grove when we merged facilities, and so she's interim for the next 3 months, and had a great conversation with the chief and making sure that we've got good transition and things are going well there at dispatch. I think that that's probably, as we have grown to multiple valleys and counties at this point, it gets hard to have that connection with dispatch. So still looking at how we can try to continue to have that camaraderie and debriefing that needs to happen, but we might have to hit pause till we find a new director and come up and run for a little bit. Other than that, the North Point meeting was canceled due to lack of items needing to be discussed, so that was a great meeting not to have to go to. But other than that, that's my report, man.
Okay. Thank you for that report. Councilmember Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just ditto on that employee Christmas party. I thought it was a great event and had a good turnout, and I think things went really well. I don't normally like comedians, and I actually laughed that night, so that's pretty good. If they come on the TV, I turn the station immediately. But anyway, it was a good night, and hope the employees enjoyed it and appreciated it. Am I missing one? Okay. Last night I went to the junior high and attended the American Fork Symphony Peace on Earth Christmas program. They had as guest artists the Highland Chorale Arts. It was a good program. It was a pretty good program. I really enjoyed it. I talked to somebody, it was estimated there were probably 350, 400 people there in attendance, so it was a good attendance. They did a great job with the program. Today I went to a grand opening for La Puente, the Chamber of Commerce. I first ran into La Puente about 25 years ago. They've been up in Salt Lake on State Street, and they've grown now. I think there's 6 or 7 of them I saw on the webpage. But they do serve a good Mexican meal, so encourage people to go to that. It's over what I call in the Meadows. I don't know if that's actually in the Meadows, but it's where the Asian buffet used to be. Just getting open and getting running, and they're doing a good job there. And then this Friday night, the Timpanogos Chorale is going to have a program at the junior high starting at 7 o'clock, titled Singing Out Christmas. So if people are interested, I'm sure that will be a good program and enjoyable Christmas music. I have learned that I have to hold off until at least the day after Thanksgiving before I start the Christmas music, because I love Christmas and I love Christmas music. So these are great things that the city's doing. And again, it's just another addition to the culture that this city has, that the citizens have, and to the many great things that take place in our community. So all of those are unofficial assignments. My official assignments are all in limbo right now with nobody meeting for various reasons. So I don't have any committee assignments to report on. Thank you, Mayor.
Great report. Thank you very much. Councilmember Carroll.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have anything officially to report, but I will pile on to the Christmas theme. I was able to go to the Wasatch Winds Wasatch Band concert, and that also was standing room only, and I am really, really pleased to see people supporting these groups. Just really pleased, and it was a delightful show. I have the rest on my calendar. I haven't been able to attend them all. I'm hoping to attend more, but it's very exciting to see the activity, both things happening and people attending these things. So I'll say that as my report.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Taylor.
You know, Mayor, it's tough being on this end because you just kind of push repeat for all of this. But I'm with Councilmember Carroll on the great things with the yards that are taking place. I love the fact that, you know, in 2000, excuse me, it wasn't even that, it was in 1996, around 1997, 98, when we started getting the library going, we talked about the rotunda and how the rotunda would be a significant spot in the library. And it's really cool to see these things happen. We've had a couple events there. For the holidays, of course, the Still Days Art Show has been there, but it really is, I don't know, it's awesome. From everything from acoustics to everything else, it's exciting to see that happening. You certainly have a wide variety of opportunity if you appreciate the arts to be able to take advantage. And I love the fact that you go there and you are getting there early to get a seat. And so that's exciting. I'm very appreciative of that and the talents that are exhibited in our community and how hard these good folks work. We had our final meeting of the year with the golf course committee, and it was a great year for the golf course. There's a lot of changes that took place, and the golf course committee, and particularly the pro and his staff, wanted to extend a great thanks of trust for the city and for standing behind them in this, and Pleasant Grove and Lehigh as well, and giving them the opportunity. We will very, very nearly double what we did in revenue last year, this year. And it is because of a lot of different changes that have taken place, and that group is working extremely hard. And you don't have to be a golfer to appreciate the good things that's going on up there and what they're doing. And they're good people, and they're making great things happen. So it was really exciting to pass the budget for the next year, set our meeting agendas and different things, and then just have a time where they express thanks for all the good things and support that they've received. So I wanted to pass that along to all of you and express my appreciation for your trust with that as well. So that's all I have here. Okay.
Thanks for that report.
Can I add one thing?
You bet.
I'm terrible at this. 'Cause
You're
I do
fine.
it every time. I had the opportunity to go to the high school this last week as well, and the student council has put on a drive-through light parade there. And I didn't frankly quite know what they were doing, but on the back of the little pamphlet they gave us as we pulled through, there was a list of maybe 10 or so individual students who are struggling. And one was living in a car, was homeless. One of them was raising his siblings, or his or her siblings. They kind of shared a little blurb about who these funds were going to help. It was all free, volunteer, and then at the end they all asked and collected donations. And I just was so proud of the young kids in our community. They ended up raising over $10,000 to benefit those families. And I mean, sometimes I wonder about whether the next generation can get their motivation. I think if we just get out of their way, they can do great things, and they already are. So I just would be remiss if I didn't mention those, because they did some fantastic stuff through this holiday season.
Thank you for adding that. Don't ever hesitate to, you're not interrupting to add good news. So, okay, item number 5 is the mayor's report. I did have a chair of the Utah Lake Commission, and we had a meeting last week. And I think notable to that meeting was there was a progress report on the Utah Lake Authority, a bill that will be introduced this year at the legislature, which will supersede and take the place of the Utah Lake Commission. I have a lot of concerns, but I have not seen the bill, so I reserved any feedback or anything with the bill until I actually can read it, but it does concern me until we see the actual language of that, which when we do and it can be made public, I'll make it public to this body. So one other thing is that the average depth of Utah Lake is about 9 feet. Currently it is 4.5 feet low, so it's about half. So we are in grave need of a really good snowpack this year to bring it back up. There's a tremendous capacity to store more water in Utah Lake. The light ceremony at Robinson Park was really fun. I just pushed a little button. Santa and myself, we pushed a button, and all the lights just magically turned on at Robinson Park and down the main street. There was a lot of people, a great turnout. And again, when we talk about all these things, we're talking about a sense of community within American Fork, and that was just one event. I attended the mayor's lunch with the executive committee and invited guests from the chamber at Fox Hollow last week. It was a meeting with other chambers, and so we did hear from other mayors. We heard from Alpine School District. We heard from Jason Wilson from American Fork Hospital. It was a really good meeting to connect with key leadership within our city, and it was a lot of fun. I took about 5 minutes and kind of give them the highlights of American Fork. I could have gone on for a lot longer, but I felt my comments should be limited because of the many people that were going to participate. And again, one of those community events this last Saturday, I absolutely had a blast with Santa and the Grinch. And we drove around. It was about almost a 2-hour ride. It was scheduled to be about 90 minutes. We were about 20 minutes behind it towards the end, but having the Grinch there kind of took on a whole new thing with him throwing out onions. If you haven't read or heard, or the Grinch was throwing out onions to young children, but he was in full character, and he would roll out an onion. I'm sure you got a few at your house, Ryan, did you? Okay, yeah. When we went by up First East, I thought there's a pretty good group at Councilmember Hunter's house, and I'm sure he rolled out a few onions. And so after that, I took Santa, and this was in cooperation with the police department. We picked a family that we felt like just could use a visit from Santa Claus. And we went to their house personally. And I'm going to say his name because there's a lot of, this is his name. I won't say his last name, but Santa, myself, 2 police officers went to a single mom with 2 children. Wyatt, who is 11 years old, when Santa asked him what he would like for Christmas, he paused, he looked down, and he said, "This is going to be a really weird ask." And he said, "I just want friends." And it kind of broke my heart to hear that. And how does Santa respond to friends? But Santa is a great person and had a great answer. I reassured Wyatt, when he thinks of friends in American Fork, please think the mayor is his friends. And I have learned today that the police department is going to assemble a group of people, and they have a donation, and they can go to Jack and Jill Bowling Alley, and they're going to take Wyatt, and they're going to let Wyatt know that he has a community full of friends. And it was pretty special just to participate with that and see just the look in the mom's eye that of all the people in American Fork, that we chose her to be able to spend some time and talk with her 2 children. And so we live in a great place. We really do. So that's the mayor's report. We will now move on to the common consent agenda, consisting of the 8 items that are before you. We do have some notable changes in the minutes, and that would be for, I'm just looking at this is for November 9th meeting. So I'm not sure who presented those changes. Okay, great. So Councilmember Carroll made some changes. Council has seen those changes. Is there any questions for staff concerning the common consent agenda?
Mayor, I'll go and make a motion to approve the common consent agenda as presented.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Taylor on the common consent agenda, and I will call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Thank you. As we move on to the action items, I would like those present and for those who are online and for the public record to note that this packet for these action items consisted, and for this whole packet consisted of about 202 pages that is online and has been since last week. The council has had time to review it. If you think that we're going through this agenda quickly, we might be, but there have been several items that have had questions, and the council is very educated, and there hasn't, even in many of these issues, especially storm drain, we've had work sessions on it. We have special subcommittees that have been working on this for months. And so I just want to make that as a part of the public record, so that as we move forward through this agenda, that those present understand the educational level of this council and the mayor. We'll now move on to those action items. Item number 1 is review and action on approval of a beer and alcohol beverage license for La Puente, located at 101 North West State Street, number 114.
Mayor, I move approval of the beer and alcohol beverage license for La Platte, located at 101 North West State Road, number 114.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
second by Councilmember Carroll. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 2, review and action on a resolution adopting updated storm drain rates. Thank you, Scott. I mean, you go ahead. Is there any questions that, again, this was a part of a work session item. Scott was coming forward, but is there any questions that the council has concerning the storm drain rates that we talked about?
Yeah, Mayor, I do. I had a lot of reflection on this, and I appreciate David getting back some answers to me and questions that I had. I'm a geek, so I started saving my utility bills since I was elected. Went back and kind of took a look and saw what the increases have been over the years and kind of comparing it back to 2012. And for the most part, I think we've done a great job. From my financial analysis of my own bill, which is probably, be different from everyone else's to a certain extent, but we're averaging about a 2.5% increase per year on the combined utility bill. As I took a look at it, I really kind of ponder, okay, what is it that's going to help us move the needle on the infrastructure side? Because I really think that's the motivation behind the water rate increases that we've had, the sewer rate study we looked at, and now we're looking at storm drain. And as we talk about sidewalks and roads, and I really feel like it's, I don't mean this to come across the wrong way in any way, shape, or form. I don't know any better way to put it, but it's kind of this syndrome of ignore Peter to pay Paul. Or, kind of the same thing with storm rates. We've kind of ignored it. I don't know, ignore is the right way, or defer an increase for so many years, and all of a sudden we're seeing a need for, 93% increase. We're going to try to spread out over a 5-year period of time. And as I envision it, I look at our citizens and residents, and they've got X number of dollars of increases that they can be able to use for city services over time. And I kind of compare that to the priority of what I hear from residents and where those dollars would be best used that they have. The number one that I hear all the time, and I'm sure you as well hear, is roads. And I don't doubt the need and the importance of a storm drain increase. I just wonder if it couldn't be part of an overall package where we look at potential increases that we need to make on infrastructure and say, hey, if it's $6 over the next 5 years that we're going to increase, is that really best utilized 100% in the storm drain fund? Or can that be split up a little bit differently to maybe some other infrastructure needs that we have out there? And maybe we slow that increase on the storm drain fee, maybe over a 10-year period of time. But that then gives other funds to be able to utilize for infrastructure like roads and sidewalks. I went back into our budget this last year and just took a look. Our culinary budget fund has an unallocated fund balance of $12 million that we have that's just sitting in cash. That's been there from the water rate increases that we have. Thought, well, that's great. It was done by Bowen Collins. It was needed to be able to have for infrastructure that we needed to pay for. But I'm looking at that 12 million and saying, did we need to increase water so high, so steep over that time, or was maybe a moderation better? And taking some of those dollars and putting towards other infrastructure needs that we have. Would have been better back then to look at a more comprehensive look of maybe a little bit in storm drain, a little bit in culinary water, a little bit in sewer, and a little bit to roads and sidewalks. So as we get these projects to be done, we don't end up with one fund that has a lot of cash in it and other areas that, for lack of a better term, like roads and sidewalks, that I don't think, I would call them deficits at this point, because we know we need to be spending more, but we're not. So we're kind of deferring that maintenance and things down the road. So I didn't know the emergent nature of this, how urgent it is to pass. As I looked at it, and David, you gave some great feedback, I looked at the fund balance that we could currently have and said, gosh, I don't know if passing this tonight causes any great issues for the city that we're gonna put the city in any bad position. I wonder though, if we took a look at it and say, is there a way to maybe moderate that increase over a 10-year period of time and look at funding for roads and sidewalks? So as we do put in new infrastructure, new gutters, that there could be new roads associated with it, that there could be new sidewalks associated with it. I know that's a grandiose idea that's out there, but I really think that if we could accomplish that and kind of put that plan in place over the next 10 years, we'd be putting the city in a lot better financial position. My worry, if we do and implement what is currently before us tonight by our consultants, we'll end up with the same thing we have with the water rates, where we'll collect it over time and it will build. And I'm sure there'll be a time when we need to use that. But I look at that 12 million that's accumulated and I go, gosh, I know that's important. I know that we gotta use it, but maybe that was better moderated. So just a few of my thoughts. I thought I'd put that out there to the council and say, you know, is it worth taking the next 6 months to look at it? I love the study. I love the bar graphs and showing where the funding needs to be. And I thought, how cool would that be to actually do that for sidewalks and streets? To be able to say, hey, we've actually now got a plan of how we're going to fund our sidewalks and streets to complement our water, sewer, and storm drain. But for me, as a financial guy, and I come from a background of financial planning, that seemed to make more sense from a comprehensive approach. But thought I'd just open that up for conversation amongst the council.
I do have a couple of thoughts on that. One is that as we were looking at the water rates, which only happened 3 years ago, maybe, the change in water rates, I'm guessing, because it was after
2011 was when the water rates started to change. Then we had 3 consecutive years of increases.
And
well, we did
and
it
then
right
they came
after
back.
I got on the council.
My recollection in 2018, and I tried to go back and look at it, and I got the different ordinances written here. We did it originally, then we came back and said, hey, is this fair? Is this equitable because of high-density housing and how it's being charged and the meters that are going in and the meter size? And so my understanding was that 2018 was a net neutral increase. It was just reallocating how we were charging.
We did both. at
Maybe I
time.
got that
We
wrong.
did one reallocate, we had a reallocation as well as an increase, and it was a step up, right? It was a step up even of increased, which
yeah,
we're still
with
having
July.
another one.
Correct.
And at the time, we had a similar discussion, and I recall us discussing the idea that when we're charging these fees, we're charging for just that system because we want the fee to cover the actual cost of the system. And from the analyses that we're getting, it's looking like what we're charging is not actually covering it. And in order to be responsible, we decided at that time, okay, we should probably have enough to cover that.
I would be interested to know if 12 million is the fund balance and if it is unallocated. I don't know that.
So let me just address a little bit about our fund balances in different enterprise funds. At times, those fund balances will grow
Yeah.
because what we have in front of us are major improvement projects. For instance, the 36-inch line that
Yes.
needs to be taken
That's-
all the way through town.
That's what I was
It's a
thinking.
$25 million job, right? And those costs are only going up because labor and materials keep escalating. In addition to that, we have a couple of wells that we're redrilling, and we're talking millions of dollars to redo our wells. We have another well that's on target to drill on the south side of town, south of 200 South. And so there's another couple $1 million to drill that new well. So as we look at all these projects that are in front of us, it far exceeds the fund balance that we have. And so what we do is we end up prioritizing projects and saying, okay, what ones have to get done now? So it may appear that there's a large fund balance, but there are so many priority projects consuming that fund balance that are right here on our door. So
Okay.
that can happen, and even with stormwater, we may have a large stormwater project that needs to be completed. And I think I sent a few of those projects in an email
Yes.
to Councilmember Sheldon. And when you total those, they add up to millions of dollars.
Right.
And so we need to build up a fund balance so that we can cover those costs. Otherwise, we would have to go and borrow those dollars.
And that was my
pay
other
back with
point,
interest.
is that the fund balance has to accumulate in order to have enough money to pay cash for
And
something.
I understand
So,
that.
sorry, I'm gonna propose something. For me, I also was a little bit concerned at the increased step up so quickly. And I mentioned this in our work session. I would actually propose that we, instead of passing the entire step up, that we do the first 4 years, so it would go to 850. And then in 2 years, it would go to 1050, and then we stop there and we reevaluate, look at the fund, see how much has accumulated in the fund and how much we need. That way, we're not going the whole gamut, but we're still getting where we need to get. One thing that I'm really concerned about not doing it at all or waiting 6 months, as you presume, is the fact that we have this new federally mandated, what do we call it? Stormwater management plan, which is not funded essentially with what we have in our fund. So to me,
Yeah.
delaying it is irresponsible.
Can we look at that one real quick? So can we pull up the graph that has the different bars on there? I think this helps us understand that a little bit better. Right there. Oh, yep, perfect. So if we take a look at it, this year we're spending about, I'm gonna use a guess on that, about 700,000, right? And we're collecting just shy, maybe 1.7 million is what we're collecting right now. But you take a look at those blue shaded bars that we went over in the work session, that is the increase that is needed for compliance. So clearly that is funded under our current, if we don't raise rates at all, that actually,
It's actually cumulative, and so you can't just say, that's already funded and under our current rate, because all of those pieces add up to the full rate.
okay,
So-
I get that, but I guess that when we're talking just the mandated federal SWIP, right? That is in the blue shaded boxes. And that is-
The hatched, yeah.
Correct, and that is below the black line. So if we take a look at it, and as I look at that black line, the things that are mostly above it are the green items. And I understand it's cumulative and stacked, right?
But really, that's just the way Bowman and Collins put the color-coded bars in. They could have put the green lower than the black line.
Sure, and I would have come back and
Right.
said, look, if you would have flipped it, this is what's happening. And if you look at the past, you haven't done a lot of green. That's why we're so far under our current fees right now, right? And Bowman and Collins comes in and says, hey, you've got this many assets out there. We're gonna take the life cycle of that, divide it, and this is how we come up with the green number, right? So as we've talked about it in the past, it's the same analysis they've done for our water fund. I don't doubt that there's a need for that green area. And we've talked about the need of that. I don't doubt it. My worry is do we complement the services? So if a resident can spare $6 a month, where is that money best spent? And I appreciate, Councilman Carroll, where you come in and you say, hey, each of these funds have to be looked at individually. And I agree 100% on that, but that is also part of the problem in my mind from the city, is that we only look at them individually. What I think changing that mindset is, our job as a council, we represent each one of those funds. And I'm gonna throw roads and sidewalks in there as if they are enterprise funds. That's infrastructure that needs to be funded, that I think a study like this would be awesome to be at, wouldn't it? To be able to say, hey, this is actually where we need to be at on our sidewalks and our roads. So if a customer of ours or a resident has $6 a month, where is that best spent at? Is it best spent just going into one fund, like we did for water, allowing it to accumulate? Or is it better to say, hey, you know what, let's do a little bit in each area, and as we go through the different sections of town, we actually have the funds to be able to do these different types of projects. Of the list that you gave me, I thought was interesting, the red items that we talked about, that we feel like are more immediate needs for capital improvements that we have on the horizon for the next 2 years, they added up to be right around 3.1 million. Lo and behold, our fund balance is right at 3.1 million. So what I would love to do is take a look at it and say, hey, are there other options out there? I don't know what the funding would be at, but as a resident, I would love the city to come back and say, hey, you know what? For all the infrastructure, we've taken that into consideration. We know you're on fixed income and tight budgets and things of that nature. Inflation's going up. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to eat the elephant a little at each time in each of these areas versus just focusing on one. 4 years later, we come back and look at another, and 4 years later, we come back and look at another. I think that's a more financially prudent approach to be able to take, to be a good steward of all the assets and not just looking at one single fund.
And I would argue that we are not looking at one single fund. We're constantly talking about those and how to fund them. We're diving into sewer funds. We've looked at culinary multiple times. Sorry, storm drain is what I meant by we have also looked at sewer. So
But never-
to me, so what you're saying is, to me, we are doing it, just not in framing it in the way that you're talking about.
Sure, so if we look at the last 10 years, we siloed them during that 10-year period of time, and we just look at that point in time. What I'm saying is maybe it's a mind shift that we say we look at them all, and every 3 to 4 years we look at all the funding, so we can be good at it. Yes, we talked about road funding, but how long have we talked about road funding, but really, have we got a dedicated source to be able to say we've increased this much, right? Or sidewalks. We talked about sidewalks, but we haven't really increased our sidewalk budget a whole bunch. So my worry is, yeah, we got these great green bars that are here. We can afford to go put in new curb, but we can't afford to put in new sidewalk associated with that curb. So that's why I think it's a more prudent approach to just take it and say, let's do that line shift change. Instead of every 3 or 4 years siloing it, look at it comprehensive.
I might just add a couple things that, on the stormwater management plan, we were pretty conservative intentionally on what those expenses are going to be. The last thing we want to do is put out the exact amount that we're going to put in next year, and then have the state come down and say, well, did you fund that? So while this number is showing an amount that should be funded and is scheduled to be funded, that certainly is not a holistic saying this is the entirety of what it will take to achieve what really is the end game. And so while it's there's strategy, I guess, in making sure that we're conservative in nature in what the state can come down and mandate us to do. And so while that number is indicated here, it's also not totally the full perspective of what really has to be done in the end game for that new plan. I can, just having looked at the neighboring cities, unless they're subsidizing, they're in that $16 to $20 a month range. I'm not suggesting that's what we need to do. But I also think, in addition to that point, I think it's when you compare it to roads, by funding it, not subsidizing this particular line item in the budget, that does free up monies to go into a road, potentially used in a road fund. We know that's gone up significantly over the last several years, but it's not as if we're take these new funds, spend them, and then not spend anything on the roads. I think what's my perspective of what's happening is that we're already looking at those as holistic. Perhaps it's not in one report, which is kind of what I understand you're looking for. But I definitely would not be in favor of holding off on this, because there are absolute expenses that have to happen next year, frankly this year, that will be, we will be responsible for carrying.
Well, I guess I love the state. Thanks for mandating what we have to do, but wouldn't it be great if they mandated what we had to do on roads? Maybe that would be a bigger priority for us.
And if we could do a fund that allowed that, and we didn't get sued by,
Well,
maybe that would happen.
and I think we could still do that. It's through a property tax increase versus a utility fee, and we can talk about that. But I see it as this: as I talk to residents, they go, "Rob, I can handle this much out of my checkbook. Right? This is what I can be able to handle." I think it's going to be that going forward, even more stringent with the inflation costs that we're already seeing that are out there. And so I look at that and say, if the resident's telling me, I'm throwing an arbitrary number out there, we feel the residents can handle a $6 increase, then we ought to take a look at that and say, how is that handled across all the things that we need to look at? Otherwise, we could say, let's fully fund this, and we come back and say, well, yeah, we need to raise property taxes, and then all of a sudden, residents come back, well, man, that's too much, way too much, I can't handle it.
I think the difference for me, I think, like Councilmember Hunter says, this is an unfunded mandate. Part of our Utah Lake Commission that sits on the executive board is Dr. Erica Gaddis. And this is the next big thing for the state of Utah. And I think that if we have funds that are there, I think that with ARPA money, you're going to see some loans that might be able to be, or grants that we might be able to match if we have them. I think it puts us in a good position to be able to have matching grants to, double our money as well. But the phosphorus levels of the lake and this are not going away, and they're definitely going to do nothing but just tighten down on our storm drain. And I wish we could have an enterprise fund for roads and things like that. That would be, to me, it makes more sense to kind of compartmentalize it like you're stating. But it does not work that way, as you know. And so I think it's prudent that we move forward with this, and that because it's an unfunded mandate from the state of Utah, much like meters or whatever it is that they do. But our plan is fixed with that. Is a cost, and those costs need to be accounted for.
Well, is there a way to have this study? And I thought I'd already had the unfunded mandates in there in that color. Maybe I've got that wrong. Is there a way to redo this graph then, or to redo this to help me better understand it? Because as I look at it, I see that we're covering unfunded mandates. I'm not saying that we don't, but I hate to use the excuse that, well, we just got to pass it because of unfunded mandates without exactly knowing what those costs are. Because if you're telling me unfunded mandates are going to be an increase of 1.5 million, and it's requiring a 93% increase, I didn't see that in detail, because that's not what this graph is showing us and what the consultants wrote throughout the whole report.
Those numbers were brought forward from the report that the committee, which Councilmember Hunter was on, and so they were in detail exactly the efforts that the city has to take in order to comply with our SWIP.
And that's the shaded blue line right there.
Yeah.
And so,
On the conservative.
sure, and I get it on the conservative, and I'm not saying that
We don't want to tell the state, this is exactly what you want, we want you to come down and grade us on. If we know going into that, we don't have any way to possibly fund it. So what was included in there, and that is included in here, are the items that we're confident we, number one, have to do, and also that we can do reasonably and still have the state say, hey, they're working on this and we're working and progressing. So the notion that this is somehow we're gonna build up this, enterprise fund that's got $10 million, $12 million in there that we don't quite know what to do with, and gosh, in hindsight, we shouldn't have done that. I don't think it's just not.
Well, I
That's
guess-
never been the case, though. There's never been a time when we've had that surplus when we said, gosh, what are we gonna do with
I don't
this?
see that.
2 years ago, I brought up the water balance in our budget work session and said, hey, we've got $8 million that's sitting there. What are we looking to do with it? And
And what are we going to do with it?
it's a benefit.
David just gave me a big list.
So here's the thing though. I get building up those things. It's the way that this is calculated. And it's way below the concept. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just suggesting that we don't do it as steep and we bring that down. And I think there's absolutely an ability to do it. And would that be worthy of asking our consultants to be able to do? They come back and say absolutely not. Okay, but I do believe between here and here, there's enough wiggle room. I just pointed to the yellow line and the shaded, where the shaded blue line starts. There's enough wiggle room in there that we can be able to do it. I'm not saying we don't raise the stormwater rates. I'm not saying we don't fund it. I'm saying why don't we look at it at its totality? Change that mindset and really as a city, look at how we can build our infrastructure funds.
So then, as we do that, so this is a sincere question. As we do that, we're working with enterprise funds on these things. So is that, every 2 to 3 years, we sit back and reevaluate and then assess funds for roads because we've collected enough for storm funds now. So we're going to do roads and sidewalks, and then, a 3 years later, we sit back from this study that we've done and say, okay, it looks like we're going to need to stick money into storm drain and be able to do that. And so those are separate transactions or votes every time to be able to do that, because short of it sounds to me like what you would like to see happen, what my small mind, the only thing that I can see happen that works to the way you're talking about, if it's a one fell swoop, is we do a tax increase, and then we look at these things and say we can allocate funds here, we can allocate funds here. Obviously, it's an enterprise fund. If we pull it from one, we can't, there's no place we can go. So that's what I don't understand.
So for me, as I take a look at it, we would do these Bowen and Collins studies every so often. And 4 or 5 years, whatever we determine that to be. And that's our touch point, to say, hey, where are we at? Have our increases there with inflation? Have there been other state unfunded mandates that's come down? Is there other things that we haven't taken into consideration? Is the city growing faster? Is inflation taking off? Whatever that is. But what we do is we have a plan and we just take it like a pie. We say, okay, we got $6, we're going to split it up, and this is how it's going to go. Some of that is going to have to go through truth and taxation because that's the only route that the state legislature's given us to be able to do. But you know what? We plan for it. We know we're going to do it. We can communicate that to the residents and say, hey, instead of taking $250 right now, we're going to take and split this up, and this is how we're going to do it. I think that would be good for a resident to get used to. So we get rid of this wait 15, 20 years, and then we have almost 100% increases that are needed to be able to justify what we're trying to do. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't see how the dollar amount changes for our residents. I mean, you say we're going to flatten it, but if the need still exists there and we have to meet these needs, regardless of the fund, so I'm gonna say it's going to be $6.50 from stormwater, but if we do it another way, no, it's not gonna be that. It's only gonna be $2.50 for roads, and we're gonna allocate $2.50 for roads and sidewalks. We're gonna have $2.50 for storm drain, and then we're gonna have $1.50 for culinary water.
I
So
guess-
it's the same thing.
Well, as I look at it, the difference is we're looking at it and doing it at the same time, and we're building those funds at the same time. What we're doing right now is what we did in 2012, is now all of a sudden we've got an excess of 12 million, right?
There's not an excess.
Yeah, it's still
There's
saying that.
there's no
Yeah.
excess.
There's no excess.
So,
There's $40 million in water
Projects.
projects. We're actually in the hole 28 million is the way I see it.
okay, and if that's the case, then we can look at it that direction, right? What's the hole that we have for roads? What's the hole we have for sidewalks? We haven't even looked at those numbers or really even had a discussion about an exact dollar amount. and funding we're looking to be able to have for that.
We actually have, and that was a 5-year plan that
We
was
did the
submitted to the
roads.
council.
We
We
did
did a
the
road
roads,
plan.
yes.
We outlined sidewalks, roadway, storm drain.
And
We
was
did all that.
Was that based on current budget numbers and
Yeah.
revenues, or was that based on the need of what needed to happen?
Our need is higher than the money we have. That's
So
true.
I'm not disagreeing that you guys did a great study on that and saying, hey, we allocated 2.6 million, here's how we can make that flow over time. I'm saying there's nothing like this that has been done on the road system or on the sidewalk system.
You're right, those are not enterprise funds, and because this is an enterprise fund, we do evaluate it differently than we do the roads, and that's fair. But I will tell you, if we don't do the drainage improvements along with the road improvements, and this helps fund those drainage improvements, then our roads won't last like they should.
Totally
I
get
spent
it.
several years in a UDOT lab. We talked about, we
Totally
studied
get it.
roads, and they said there's 3 criteria that you need to design for in a road: drainage, drainage, and drainage.
I totally get that. Now, on the flip side of it, what if we have money that's available in here, but we have no money for roads? Do we go in and put in the new storm drain system without improving the road at the same time?
Well, we know we have at least the funds that we've allocated in the 5-year plan, because that's the Class B and C.
Correct.
And that's the tax increase that happened clear back in 2008. Those dollars are allocated as well. So we already know we have dollars for roads, not as many dollars as we need, but we do have dollars. If we have to take those dollars and spend on drainage, then that lessens the number of miles of road that we can actually do.
I get that, but that's my point, is that we should do the analysis of what the need is to know what we should be charging the resident.
And that's what this analysis does on the drainage
It
side.
does.
Just on the drainage.
But we have not done that for the roads.
So,
Because it's not an
Well,
And now-
so is your suggestion
we're not going to
to
solve
have
that
a-
problem tonight.
That's what I was just gonna say. Is
So-
your suggestion to have a study done on roads?
My suggestion
Because
becomes,
that's not the discussion in front of us.
Because we're discussing this item, in my mind.
Okay.
That's all we're discussing. Now, I'm old and my mind is simple, and I admit that. Some of you may remember when we were teenagers, we were taught the envelope system of money management, and you put so much money in each envelope for clothing, for food, for your car, for whatever. When that money was gone, it was gone. And I think the enterprise funds, to me, are silos, are envelopes. And the money that's in those only stays in those. I don't know how much we paid Bowen and Collins, I almost mixed the name up, Bowen and Collins to do this. It doesn't matter. The point is, in my mind, we paid the experts to give us their opinion. As I look at this, their opinion says on the black projected income recommended rates, we're not getting very far into surplus with those rates. We're covering expected costs and things that need to be done in the future. It's great we've got 12 million in the water, but you could spend that before Christmas very easily, I'm guessing, and still not begin to reach all the needs that we have. So we keep mixing these other things, the water and all this other stuff, but to me, and I understand the whole picture, but to me, I go back to the envelopes and the silos. If you need this much, look at that by itself. Don't confuse me with all the other silos.
sure, and I guess as I.
Your brain works better than mine. There's no question about that in the finance. But I like the idea, what I'm getting to is I like the idea of the silos. I think we've attacked this silo. I think it was looked at very carefully over several months, right? By people that were very involved in it. I think that committee agrees with what these people have brought up. So in the interest of time, I'd like to make a motion. And that motion is to move to adopt the resolution approving the updated storm drain rates effective January 1, 2022, as we've outlined them. I was going to add more, but that would make the motion messy, so I'll leave it there.
Okay, have a motion on the floor.
And I would request that we take off the last increase and reevaluate after we have the first two and see if we have how we're doing in the fund balance, as well as how many projects we funded and need to fund.
So you would,
I-
you would,
Well, I'm going to ask this. I'm going to say, is there a second to this motion currently? Anybody would like to second that?
Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Okay.
I thought you kind of seconded it, but didn't use the word. So which one are you talking about? The,
Basically dropped the last
Yeah,
3 years, 2 years.
well, that's what I'm
Okay.
wondering. Do the one in 2024
The third
Make it
increase.
effective through 2025.
yeah,
through 2025. That's all I'm trying to clarify, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that would be my
Okay.
my request. And I think that kind of gives us a middle ground a bit in solving some of the idea of, we don't want to just charge and we don't know. We do know we have a bunch that we need to cover because we're not funding the fund enough to pay for any normal maintenance and improvements. But that would be, for me, I would feel most comfortable with.
So is that an amendment?
Yeah,
To my
well,
motion.
I'll just say,
Yeah.
I have a motion and I have a
And a
second.
second.
And so,
This
What-
is discussion right now.
well, discussion on the motion. Are you, do you want to,
If Councilmember Barnes is willing to amend his motion, and
Yeah.
if it were accepted as an amendment, then you could move forward.
yeah.
Do I amend it or does
Yes.
somebody else?
No,
need
you
to?
would amend
Okay,
it.
well then let's amend it that these will go through the year 2024, 25, through 2025 with an evaluation in 25 to be implemented in 2026. Is that a long enough amendment,
Okay,
Counselor?
I'll second.
okay. All right.
Just
I have a motion and a second, and I'm going to
Couple
call
items.
for a vote.
There's items for discussion there.
For the motion.
Great, let's talk about.
Talk
the
about
motion.
the motion, but no other items.
Okay, the motion is about the storm drain increases. I mean,
Okay.
my comment is this. As we, going back to the envelope scenario, I agree 100%. And the way that works best is you look at the increase you have and how much you put in each envelope. And I would just suggest, as we've talked about tonight, that roads and sidewalks, maybe we do treat them as their own enterprise funds. Maybe that's something we do come back and take a look at. I would hope that that's something we could maybe re-engage in a conversation at the retreat or talk a little more about, because I love the need for storm drain. I'm glad it's a state-funded mandate, but at the same time, or, sorry, unfunded, thanks for the clarification.
2 letters.
For the unfunded mandate, but I still think that we have limited resources from our residents, and we do have to take a look at the total cost and what the needs are across all of our infrastructures.
Okay. All right, I'm going to call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Nay.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion? Maybe we, for our retreat, maybe we take all of the Utah County cities and those in Salt Lake County, Davis County, Juab, those, and let's talk to those cities who have enough funds for their roads and just do what they're doing. Maybe that would be an awesome idea. I don't know why we haven't thought of that before. That's why I'm the brainiac on the council. So let's just talk to them and just mirror what they're doing.
I appreciate the candor there. I think that the issue that I really have, though, is we talk about it year after year, and I'm just trying to find a way that we can actually meet those needs and obligations. I can feel like I can go back and say, yes, I worry that, so we talked about the other day, we're kicking the can down the road, just like we did here, where we're going to have some.
We've been putting a lot more money into roads the last couple of years, it seems to me.
There's never enough, but we're putting money
That's what I
into it.
tell people, there will never be enough money.
That was my point, there was never enough, and every
Sure.
city goes through these exact same conversations of wondering how they're going to do it, how they're going to meet the need. That doesn't mean there's not a solution, but short of a huge increase in some type of tax, whether it's property, whether it's a new gas tax, whatever that might be, and we're gonna see that change even more in the future, more electric cars and all of that, all that's gonna change. And I'm not saying there's not a solution, but I can't overlook a situation that I know is imminent and right in front of me for And I don't feel like I'm kicking the can down the road either, but maybe that's just a.
No, I'm just,
philosophy.
well, I'm talking about in the past, we've decided not to raise rates for roads for various reasons, right? In the past, and that's what I mean by kicking the can down the road, is that we have in the past deferred on increases in revenue. Now, we have taken some money and put towards it. We do know we need to fund it at 5 million, and we're only doing 2.6.
But
We know
again,
this.
that's not the motion. You're.
I think, yeah, I agree. I agree. We can belabor this all night long, and we can get into roads.
Yeah.
All right, item number 3 is review and action on a resolution approving an updated general fee schedule. This is to accompany what we have just, what was passed just before it.
Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution approving the updated general fee schedule.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Carroll, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Shelton,
Nay.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Item number 4 is review and action on a resolution approving a land use map amendment located at 970 East, 1750 North, from residential low density and design commercial designation to the institutional lands and school designation. Any questions for staff on this?
Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution approving the land use map amendment located at 970 East 1750 North from the residential low density and design commercial designation to the institutional lands and schools designation.
I'll second, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Hunter, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 5 is a review and action on an ordinance approving a zone map amendment located at 970 East, 1750 North, from the RA1 Residential Agricultural Zone to the PF Public Facility Zone.
Mayor, I move to approve the ordinance approving the zone map amendment at 970 East 1750 North from the RA1 Residential Agriculture Zone to the PF Public Facilities Zone.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
Item number 6 is a review and action on an ordinance approving a zone map amendment located at 162 West, 400 South, from the R2 7500 residential zone to the R2 500 O residential zone. I'd ask what this one was at key staff. So I didn't know what that meant, so I learned something new today. So,
Mayor, I move to adopt the ordinance amending the zone map amendment located at 162 West, 400 South from the R2 7500 residential zone to the R2 7500 O residential zone.
okay. Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll
Second.
second by Councilmember Hunter, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 7 is a review and action, or 7A is a review and action on an ordinance approving the final plat for the Automall office condominium project located at 1134 East, 300 North in the PO1 Professional Office Zone. Any questions for staff or those present on this action?
I've had a chance to review this, and I would like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance approving the final plat of the Automall office condominium project consisting of 3 units and located at 1134 East, 300 North in the PO1 Professional Office Zone, and authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the November 17, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll,
Second.
second by Councilmember Taylor, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor, Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Item number 7B is a review and action on an ordinance approving the final plat of Stone Creek Plat G subdivision located at approximately 350 West, 900 South in the PR3 planned residential zone. I saw a really good view of this with Santa and the Grinch this last week. That's a up and coming growing area of our city. Great little place to live.
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the ordinance approving the final plat of Stone Creek Plat G subdivision located at approximately 350 West, 900 South in the PR 3.0 planned residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the November 17th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Have a motion by Councilmember Carroll.
I'll second, Mayor.
Second by Councilmember Hunter. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
For the public record, I would say that this area, near this area, had their share of onions thrown at them by the Grinch. A lot of kids down in that area. Yeah,
Hey,
lots
the
of
kids in my neighborhood got candy.
There was some candy. Santa
I
was-
got an onion deliberately aimed right at me.
Baffled by that.
Item
I
number
was too.
7C, review and action on the final plat for the Automall Drive Business Center Plat B subdivision located at 450 East Automall Drive in the PI 1 planned industrial zone. Any questions on this action?
Mayor, I'll move to approve the Automall Drive Business Center Plat B final plat consisting of 2 lots located at 450 East Automall Drive in the PI1 Planned Industrial Zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the November 17th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Have a motion by Councilmember Hunter,
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Item number 7D is a review and action on the final plat of the AFPD South Plat A subdivision located at 450 East Automall Drive in the planned industrial zone. Oh, we,
No.
7D, huh?
We-
Okay, you're right. Review and action on the okay, let me look at this.
No.
You're right.
I think I'm right.
We're on D, aren't we?
Yeah, review and action on the final plat of AFPD South Plat A subdivision located at 450 East Automall Drive in the planned industrial zone. You guys
Mayor,
confused me
I
there.
missed it. I'm sorry.
I'll move to approve the AFPD South Plat A final subdivision plat consisting of 23 lots and 1 parcel located at 650 South, 900 West in the PR 3.0 planned residential and PF public facilities zones, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the December 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
A second.
You have a motion by Councilmember Hunter, second by Councilmember Taylor.
Quick comment. When I first read that, I wondered why the police department was getting their own. I was just curious. It took me a while to reread it and understand it, but AFPD to me is the police department.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Action item number 8 is review and action on an ordinance approving amendments to section 17.5.133 of the American Fork City Code entitled Off-Street Parking Standards. David, you want to give us just a little leader into this?
Sure. Mayor and Council, the Planning Commission has reviewed a modification to the parking standards for residential units within the CC1 zone. This would be within the code entitled exceptions. In the discussion with the Planning Commission, they talked about two options for a reduction in parking. One option would be based on the proximity of the units to a transit system, and then the other option would be a reduction in parking based on square footage of units. The Planning Commission felt it would be appropriate to give development an opportunity to do one or the other. They're not required to do either one of these options. They can stay with the regular parking requirements, but they would have the option to use Table A, which is a reduction based on location next to transit, or Table B, which would be a reduction based on square footage size. There was a comment that I received from Councilmember Hunter in the note number 4, where it says transit. If you go up just a little bit, Kevin, I'm sorry, right there. To clarify a little bit this note, we think it would be appropriate to add the stop location of the high capacity transit line, and then there's different transit lines shall be less than 1,320 feet walking distance from the main entrance of the most distant dwelling unit in the project. So basically from the point at which you can get onto one of those facilities needs to be 1,320 to the units. So that was a great catch.
So it's not like back in the day when Kevin and I could throw a knapsack on, just grab the train.
It's different today.
Yeah. Those are the days, huh, Kevin?
Yeah, they were.
So
So under this, I just was curious, and maybe I missed, and I apologize if I did. As I was looking through here, it looks like there were two options presented to the Planning Commission. And then they kind of came back and said, they approved one, and then it looks like a little bit later, they came back and clarified that motion to say they approved both. Did I read that right?
At the very beginning, they approved both. The very first motion was to approve both. The issue why it went back to Planning Commission is the way the ordinance was presented to the Planning Commission would have allowed those options to be anywhere in the city, to any residential complex within the whole city. And so we took it back to Planning Commission and said, okay, this is just for the CC1 zone only. That's why it went back to Planning Commission. When the Planning Commission reviewed it again, they said, hey, we still like both options, even if it's just for the CC1 zone. So they recommended approval, the way you see it tonight.
So when I look at the update there on packet page 129, I guess I didn't see the second option that was being discussed or debated. I didn't see anything in there about what that was.
So again, it's Table A is one option, and that's if they're within a certain distance to a transit facility. And then Table B is a reduction based on square footage of a unit. So those are the two options.
So it's not an either or, they recommend them both in there.
And-
That it's okay.
And letting a developer choose, because some developments, quite frankly, won't be close enough to a transit line, to a facility. But they may be able to meet the code under Table B with square footage of their units.
A couple of questions I had as well. I just said if this was in my area. I know it's not in my area, but if I did that, there's a bus stop that's pretty close to our area, and the Federal Center, but it requires me to cross North County Boulevard. And I looked at that similar to crossing State Street or what will eventually become a 5-lane road over here, Pacific Drive, and wondered, do we want pedestrians crossing that for being counted? Do we want to increase that, or is that more, we want to keep that, I'm going to call it the core, between State Street and Pacific? Does that make sense?
I'm fine with them being able to cross it, because they'll get close enough to walk and they'll have access to it, even if they have to cross. I can see what you're saying, because they'll have to go down to a light and go around to the water.
Sure. I'm using the BRT a lot for the video games, part of it's at high capacity. You're jammed in there, and then you're coming off of it, and guess what happens? I see so many people that take off and they don't go to the light, right? Or they just cross that busy road. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are nuts, right? Tell my son, don't ever do that. Go to the light. So I look at that and I say, gosh, can we just limit that? Do we try to say, hey, it's okay if there's a transit stop there, they're gonna use it, but I'm not gonna use that to discount the parking because I necessarily, I don't know, people, anyway, there's a thought that I have. It's something else.
What is that?
Quarter of a mile.
Quarter mile, that's where the 13.
Yeah.
So how wide is a CC1 zone, just out of curiosity?
Couple of blocks, right?
Yeah, it's
Couple of blocks.
It's not necessarily the width, it's probably the length, because it goes down.
About 5 or 6.
I got it, but what I'm saying is someone building a project on the north side of the Pacific and then, saying, hey, there's a transit stop over here on State Street and now we gotta cross 2 busy roads to be able to get there. I don't see that as easily accessible as maybe something that's in the middle that's able to use. So I look at it from the width side of it, the length, I would not necessarily have an issue because I think that if it's the length, you're just walking up and down the street and you will eventually get light. But it's that east or north
I
south.
think we're splitting hairs on that one. It's such a short enough distance, I think it would be.
I'm just kind of going back to our original conversation, we looked at the meadow apartments, we said, hey, you gotta cross Pacific Drive, let's not have it there, let's have it go over here. I'm just trying to save.
But this isn't, I mean, I get what you're saying with that one, yeah.
They can still do it, I'm just saying, why don't we incentivize them to maybe potentially create a safety hazard? Just somehow say that,
I think I understand what you're saying, but I'm thinking of the development in the meadows where they built the 3 or 4 story apartments and they put their parking across the street over there. We had a discussion about that and the danger that's there. I just don't think we can legislate everything, and I don't think we can worry about everybody's individual little problems. I think we have to look at the big picture, and does it work for the majority of people? And if people want to be, excuse me if any of you other than me fit into this, if you want to be stupid, that's your right in this country, as it is mine and everybody else's. And I don't think we need to legislate and dictate and worry about that when we make our decisions, is all I'm saying. I understand your concerns.
I wonder if you do, because what I'm saying is, I'm not saying, hey, we legislate not being stupid, I'm just saying don't incentivize being stupid.
Semantics. Wouldn't that be
I
nice?
don't think that we would qualify.
Probably
for the-
I'm out.
I know I would.
That was a smaller discussion piece to me for the sideways. The other thing that I'm looking at here is, in the meeting we talked and looked at examples that were more bedroom oriented than square footage oriented. And we kind of came back with the square footage. I don't know if there was a reason for that. Personally, I'm a little bigger with that bedroom oriented, because that kind of tells you who's staying and sleeping there, but didn't know maybe the reason for the change from our joint work session here.
I think the planning commission discussed that as well, and John, you're welcome to chime in, but there's ability for people to really put a whole lot of people in bedrooms, but square footage would be a really good standard that we can judge units by. John, you can chime in where you want.
Based on the square footage of the units, not necessarily who was in each unit or how many was in each unit.
Yeah.
It was more or less for the CC1 zone only too.
I had some concerns about that because in the, in a scenario where it's only a 1-bedroom apartment, you could have 10 people in bunk beds, 30 and 3, and now you got 90 people in a single bedroom unit,
We do it when I go camping.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking of the cabin scenario, right? Where you get 87 people packed into one loft. But I do want to just go on the record and say I'm grateful that there's a max, or I guess a minimum threshold, the 1.75. I think that's something we need to be very protective of until we get to a point where there is a transit, like a significant transit element here.
So we actually have a proof case in Utah County that shows that to be accurate.
So, but I think this does allow developers some flexibility, which I think is good. We want to incentivize that, especially in our CC1 zone. But I also think that we have to be realistic with what we have to have these individuals rely
do have one other question. It's sorry, it's about the verbiage in section 1, number 2. It says, after receiving a recommendation from Planning Commission regarding the number of off-street parking spaces, the City Council shall have the authority to increase or decrease the number of off-street parking spaces herein identified upon the finding made following a study on the matter, that the use characteristics of the proposed use warrant adjustment. Is that outside of the tables is basically what I'm asking. Like, is that like, hey, the City Council can do this based on a finding, which is kind of what our verbiage was, which is what it is currently for the Planning Commission. They can do it based on a finding, and which kind of got us to where we are. So I wanted to clarify that specific statement.
Yes, that is possible for the city council to deviate from the table based on a finding and a study. So before it was that the planning commission could do that.
Yeah.
And this change says that the city council can do that.
Okay.
But the planning commission would follow the table.
Yeah. And the way that it's written, I think it's pretty clear, but just to clarify, the planning commission is free to give a positive or negative recommendation, and then the council still has ability to act or modify that instead of having, it can only affirm or disavow there.
I'm going to have Sherilyn answer that one. That might be more.
That's correct. So the way that this was modified was so that the planning commission is the recommending body on the parking as opposed to the decision-making body for the adjustment to parking. The way that the ordinance reads now, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And certainly they could appeal that to council, and then council could go contrary to the planning commission. But the way that it reads, the way that we're changing it so that it's a recommendation from planning commission to council, council is the one that makes the final decision there.
Okay. And the other land use decisions then still land to the planning commission, and there's no problem with decoupling those things?
Essentially what it does is it forces the request for parking adjustments to come to council, regardless of whether or not the other land use decisions have to. If they're asking for a reduction in parking, it has to come to council, unless they're going off the table.
Off the table, it would not have to.
Depending on the type of plan it is, yes. 'Cause some things go to council, some things stop at planning commission.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
But no one's going to come and ask for less parking, so it's.
So, Shirley, just to clarify there then, in the verbiage under A and B, it says in the last line, under no circumstances. Is that, when I say under no circumstances, it seems as if the finding would still make it to be a 1.75.
1.75 is going to be the minimum parking standard.
I almost wish that would be put up there with the finding as well, just to clarify it, that the city council doesn't have the authority unless they want to change the code, right? So if someone comes in and says, I've got a finding of 1.5, council can't say, well, we agree with that, they'd have to change the code to be able to allow that. Is that what I'm reading now?
Well, we can clarify to make the 1.75 a hard and fast, council can never go around it unless you change your code.
But if we do that, then we won't need them to come to council, because if that's the standard and that's what it, I mean, really what number 2 is saying is if you're going to submit a
Sure.
study that's going to go less than 1.75, then it has to come to the council for
So whichever way we do it, I just ask for clarifying language that under this provision, under no circumstance, I don't say under no circumstance except for a finding by the city council in section blah, 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 blah. That just helps clarify a little bit, because under no circumstances just makes it seem like, and leave it to, I don't know, maybe little minds are better, but under no circumstances to me kind of makes it seem like that's it, end of story.
I thought it was just pertaining to that section.
It is, and so we can add clarifying language to that though, that says, it's, where it says under no circumstances shall the per unit parking requirement drop below 1.75 spaces per dwelling unit, except as referenced in.
And I like that way if the developer's reading that, they're going, oh, there is an exception process. I can go there and take a look at what that exception process
We
is.
can put that in.
I think that's a good idea. I think there's some value in closing the loophole as well, where somebody says, well, it says right here. Well, I guess they would never complain.
They're never gonna complain with
They're
an
not-
exception.
I don't want to have to, I guess my point is, I don't want to have to legally articulate why this is if we just put it in there.
It's an easy enough fix if
Yeah.
that's the desire, not a problem.
I have one more question, and this is partially maybe due to me not knowing a lot about this topic, but one of the noted things for table A was HUD and public agency and reduction for those things. And I question having that in there only because, once again, giving them an advantage over other types of development, I'm not sure the rationale behind that. Maybe somebody has a better idea for me, but for me, I would prefer that be strict.
So the projects that the planning department looked at, if they were HUD projects, they actually did park at a lower rate. So then
They just require less parking, is that what you mean by parking
Well,
low rate?
actually, the residents who live in those projects actually park at a lower rate.
Yeah.
And so because of that, and there's examples, detailed examples of how HUD projects actually require less parking. That's why it was included here for a reduction, but it's only a partial reduction.
Yeah.
So it'd be 0.15 is the max you could get in a reduction if you have a HUD project.
And public agency, why is it lumped in with it?
There could be another public agency other than HUD.
Who does
So,
a residential?
who does a residential project, maybe Utah County Housing Coalition
Aren't
or,
those two that we have in the city, Utah County
yeah.
housing
Okay.
things, the two buildings?
I'm just wondering if there's a presumption or if we have data that they also have the same parking requirements as that.
I believe Vendel looked at the data on that, and that's why he helped us through this before he left. This has been going on for quite some time.
And I think the safety net there, when you have in the park, if you check off all these boxes, you still can't go over 1.75, even if, and I think
No,
Except for number two,
Except for HUD, if you're a public agency, then you park at a lower rate. The other one has to come to city council to be able to go below that.
so if you look at table A, if you're a public agency or HUD, then you can get up to a 0.15 reduction from the 2.25. And so it only gives you a partial reduction for being a HUD or a public agency facility, similar to, off-site parking or being close to transit. So really what it is if you add up all of those items that you could get a reduction from, you can pick and choose whatever those are, but it can't go lower than 1.75.
and why does it say up to for that one and not just 0.15?
I think that would be evaluated because not all units in a complex are HUD units. Some might be a housing unit, and some other may be regular rent units. So there would need to be an evaluation.
The other piece of that is that, in looking at that footnote, it does state based upon a study that a reduction is warranted. So they would still have to bring in a study. Those typically though, I believe, even though they still have to have a study, it's one of those that's kind of a presumption as well. They have those studies readily available to them.
So just to be clear, I think there's two modifications that the council has mentioned. One would be in footnote 4 under transit, and that would be the stop location, adding the word stop. And then the other one would be in the, just right before table A and table B, requirement, under no circumstances shall the per unit parking requirement drop below 1.75 spaces per dwelling unit unless,
Except as referenced in 17.5, 133D.
So Mayor, I'll take a shot at this. I would move to adopt the ordinances amending section 17.5.133 of the American Fork City Code entitled Off-Street Parking Standards, noting the examples just relayed by City Administrator David Bunker. Those two items, noting the floor in terms of not being able to go below 1.75, and the stop on the is that section 4. Noting the changes that were mentioned tonight.
Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay. All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Hunter, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Item number 9 is a review and action on an ordinance approving amendments to section 15.01.1526 of the American Fork City Code entitled Minor Collector Cross Section with Side Path, Median, and Bike Lanes. This would be applicable to 1100 South. Scott? Is there any questions before we bring Scott off that back row? We're going to get back into these again. Come on up, Scott. Come on down.
My question pertains to the median, which is what we're adding, actually. I think, well, one of these down there, but it might have been this cross-section, had a median originally, and we took it out for the ability for ambulances and fire trucks to go down. So that's my question.
I didn't, Counselor, I don't think that was for this particular cross-section. That was a different road, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, if there's a
could be.
median in the middle and 10 foot on each side, is there enough for the fire truck, basically?
Yes, and this, I'm sorry, I got to take my glasses
This
off.
wouldn't be an elevated median.
This is a striped median.
Or a suicide lane, they sometimes call them.
Turn lane.
Turning movements.
A twiddle, a two-way turn lane. Better than a,
No.
that's a real term.
Hey, the
It's a
suicide
two-way
lane.
turn.
Suicide lane is understandable by everybody. Twiddle, we don't know
Yeah,
what the
let's-
heck
I
you're
just-
talking about.
It's just one of those terms I try to
understand.
avoid, and you can guess why. I get scared with those terms, just kind of like Councilwoman Carroll scared me a while ago with like splitting hairs comment. Those things scare me, so I get worried
Okay,
about.
so no actual median, that's just a term we're using for the turning lane.
It's still a median, but it's a painted median, a center
Okay.
lane essentially.
Okay.
If you prefer that over twiddle.
Couple quick,
Oh my goodness.
couple
Wow, it's a
questions
rough
I had.
crowd today.
Is this really just for one road in the TOD? Is that really, or there, can you show me where this is applicable?
And it's not really, so this road is not in the TOD. It's on the edge of it, but it's the 1100 South where really what the problem a lot with 1100 South, it had some very inconsistent sections and we're trying to really make it uniform. And so rather than just calling out 1100 South, it's calling out with a detail for whenever there is a minor collector, when there is also a side path median and bike lanes. If another road in the future would meet that definition according to the master plans, where it would have those components, it would also follow this detail.
And then, is it possible to see that on a map? I apologize, I'm trying to have
Sure.
a hard time seeing 1100 South and where that's.
1100 South is right in front of Amazon.
Correct, from really the train tracks and little
As it comes around.
on to the west. It ends at, Camden's working on it. Boat Harbor.
Boat Harbor
Right.
Road.
Boat Harbor on the
It'll
west
intersect
and-
that, and then it'll keep going from there.
So maybe this was
There it
already
is.
approved, and I apologize, but as I look at it, we got a 10-foot concrete side path, and then we have a 5-foot bike lane. Usually we do one or the other. I'm just not sure why we're doing it.
Well, and those are components that are called out on all the master plans. And so, but what the master plans didn't really do was then, okay, show where do these components go. That's a road that's viewed in the future when it builds out as having a huge pedestrian component. We could see a huge bike and pedestrian component. And so this is one of those things that in discussing with Camden, with Vinland, he was here when we had discussed this, David and so forth, figured, well, how do we try to accommodate those things and to accommodate, as we've talked before, the spandex crowd versus the fat old bald guys like me crowd that are on their bikes trying to, you know. Right. And so this was, you know, the what we felt was the best way to do it.
I think the other side path throughout town we reduced to 8 feet. And so I didn't know if there was a reason why this would be 10 feet versus 8 feet.
Councilman, I can't remember. I mean, there is some.
Because it also constitutes our trail. And Ben, I wish Ben Lynn was here because he can help us with this, but he had some input, some specific input on that, but that also constitutes the trail as it comes down 1100 and heads west. So it's a combination sidewalk and trail. It is concrete.
Okay. Got
Well, we
it.
have a bike lane too, is what you're saying.
Look, I'm just saying, you got a
Bike lane.
trail, you got a bike lane. Everywhere else, where we just got a side path, we said 8 feet was good throughout the city. I'm just wondering why we would justify an extra 2 feet. And, you know, to us, maybe 2 feet's not a big deal, but I'm sure the developers would take a look at that cross section. And my question is, does the developer pay 100% for this, or are there minimums that they pay and then the city pays on top of that for these cross sections and improvements that we're looking at?
We're going to change the code so that they pay for their street as well as.
Well, guess what? We're gonna probably have to, this is gonna go right by our park. So we'll have to cut our
It will.
This is obviously right on the south border of the new acreage,
So it's a curiosity.
So as far as does the developer have to pay for the whole cross section here? The answer to that is no. They only have to pay for a standard local cross section. So as we go wider, and the 72 feet is our minor collector standard cross section, anywhere we have a minor collector, that would need to be paid for from another fund, but not, the developer would not have to pay for that whole cross section.
Okay, so as I look at that again, I don't know the distance on it, call me penny picture, but that 2 feet of concrete, we're gonna lay all the way down there, gonna come out of the city budget somewhere. Is that really gonna make a big, is that something we could save some money on? I just don't know if that, we've got 8 feet everywhere else in the city, and all of a sudden we go to 10 feet. I look at it going, and I actually feel good going down to 6 feet with a bike path right there. But that's just me.
You can't pass someone on bike. You can't have people both ways. Even 8 feet is uncomfortable.
I think he's saying that there's already a dedicated bike path. So if you have an additional, like a pedestrian, we'll call it that.
That's true.
And as we talked to Vandalin again, he was, and I wish he was here, but again, there's two different types of bikers. The bikers that are serious about it, they'll be on the road, but we will have bikers on the concrete side path as well. Kind of more of the recreational.
That's a better term.
I tend to concur, and we had this same discussion, and I felt the same way when we were talking about 200 South, but that 10 feet's a ton right there, especially where we have the bike lane, then we have the separation, the 2-foot separation, and then that travel lane of 2 feet. And I think you can take out one type of biker, the biker who's going to be, whether we're calling them spandex or they're traveling, they don't care about either one of these lanes that much. The travel lane, if you have people on cruisers that are going to work casually or that way, I think 8 feet is plenty. I really do. So we go 6, 6, 2, 5, 2, 8, not 10 on both sides.
Travel lanes can't be 8 feet, but you can have somewhere else.
So would we go to 70 feet total and take out 2
I
feet
think
of
what we're
the?
all kind of saying is that we feel like this cross section is
I'm
very
sorry,
wide.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong thing, yeah.
So if we took the 10-foot concrete side path down to 8 feet, then we take 2 feet away from the total width of the bike lane.
As I look at it too, it'd be nice to know what this connects into. I mean, I still have the visual, I apologize, I know we've probably gone over it 100 times, but does this pipe into a 15-foot trail? And maybe there's a reason to have a bit, well, I mean, isn't that what we're doing in 200 South, is a 15-foot trail? So I don't know if this really is
Yeah, that's down the center of the 200 south cross section.
Right, so
It's
I'm
in the center.
assuming that there'd be some great way of kind of funneling that up versus going straight from one to the other. So it's hard to see, I would like those cross sections to somehow merge effectively, but I don't know, starting to ending, what the plan looks like.
If you can flip the screen, do you have that, Scott? So 1100 south, you know, starting at I-15 and heading west. On this map here, it's listed as 6800. That really is 1100. And so that road will continue to the west, and then eventually come over to 700 west, which is the major collector or the minor collector, heading north up to 200 south, and then it would tie into the trail system on 200 south.
Did you want me to try to find it?
Can I look at that? If it's on the outskirts of the TOD, I just don't even know what you need to have. I'm happy going with it. Now I kind of see the visual of it. I'm gonna go with 6 feet on that. I mean, I don't know. That's a lot of concrete that we're paying to maintain. It's a big cross section that we have. If we could be able to shrink that down, I don't think you're gonna be harming the usability of that.
I wonder about keeping it at 7 feet height with a 6-foot board slab. If you decide that we need 4 feet, we've got the space to pour another time.
Then, so you make a determination once prior to development going in, right?
No, I'm saying if what Bob's suggesting is a 6-foot, I'm gonna call it sidewalk, not the side path. A 6-foot side path with a dedicated bike lane. And then that would give you room for a 4-foot sidewalk on the outside of the side path. If you determine that, yeah, sure enough, we do need 10 feet there. That saves your expense of 4 feet of concrete times.
But then what do we do with that extra 4 feet?
Counselor, if I could, I like the suggestion because it does keep it consistent with all the other minor collectors.
I
Just
would
in
say
terms
this
of
as
width of the
well,
right-of-way.
because this is dangerously close to the Boat Harbor or Utah Lake, and we know there's going to be a Murdoch Canal type trail that's going to go around the entire lake. In fact, American Fork City is going to have the first lake, and people will come around and be able to use this much like they do the Murdoch.
So you're suggesting we leave the 10?
I am. I really am. I think that cross section of the trail around the Murdoch, around the Utah Lake, will be a 12-foot trail system.
Is that including a bike path, or is it?
No,
a dedicated bike lane?
Yeah.
Wait,
No, I think it's 12-foot total.
it's just like Murdoch.
It's like the Murdoch Trail, exactly like the
So
Murdoch.
that's what I'm getting at. So if you have 5 feet plus an 18-inch curve, or gutter, technically not curve, that's 7.5 feet, really, for bikes. They're not gonna ride in the gutter, for sure. But space-wise, and then you have 6 feet for side path, you're basically well into that 12, 13 feet.
Yeah, correct.
Strollers. Personally, I would rather see the dedicated land. I've never seen the city not be able to use that space. Well, I guess they have, but I mean, I like the idea of not having to incur the cost out of the general fund to throw in an extra.
So the bulk of that will be paid for through development fee, impact fee, because it's a facility identified on our master plan for the use of that for growth.
Trail impact fees. It wouldn't be general fund, right? It'd be trail
Okay.
impact
I
fees.
misunderstood that then.
And then one
If
concern,
anybody else is paying for it, then let's do it.
one concern about leaving it vacant there or not doing something with it is then how do we maintain that 4 feet or that 2 feet? It'll be weeds, and then the landowner will call and say, hey city, you've got a 2 or a 4 foot strip here, please come down and clean it up.
Yeah, I can, yeah, sure.
That was
I go back to that, if we can jump back I go back to that 8 foot rather than 10, and I know what you're talking about, Mayor. But I still think that's huge. So,
Okay.
But, you know,
I-
I mean, on our plan, it just calls for the bike lane, it doesn't call for the side path. When we put this in and we approved it, didn't have that side path. We look at our die, you got it coming off of Murdoch Canal, right? And then when we go on 980 North, you hit a bike lane that takes you to a bike path up the right of the west side of the golf course, right? So, and we look at the trail here, the river trail that goes down, and then it stops and it turns into a bike path that goes down Center Street, and then it picks up again at Bicentennial Park. I mean, I can't think of another place where we would approve the bike lane and a side path.
Would you prefer, like, it's actually more feet to have a park strip and a sidewalk, which is what's on the other side?
I would,
You know what I mean? So if it's not gonna be, if it's gonna be just sidewalk, this is like, we have a park strip too, which I don't wanna add more into this giant cross section necessarily.
so I apologize, I'm gonna come back and look at my map and look at that cross section. You got a 6 feet park strip, right? So you're saying if you go to 6 feet, it actually increase it by 2 feet because you gotta do a 6 foot.
I mean, not necessarily,
strip.
but potentially, if you wanted it to be like a 6 foot sidewalk.
no.
That's a hard one. I would say if I was going that direction, I'd put in a park strip and let the residents take care of it at that point. If that's what we were looking at. I'd like to just keep it consistent. I don't know why you would go any different, but I'll be honest with you. We have the 8 foot trail that just has a curb gutter combo on it throughout the city. Maybe that's the way to be able to go with a curb gutter combo on it. And since we've had that discussion, I've looked, man, we got lots of different stuff in the city. It's like a patchwork of stuff over years of stuff. And I think curb gutter combo works good in some places and others. If you've got a park strip on the other side, great. I don't see a need to put another park strip in there. Maybe it's 8 feet and you do.
If I could just give one comment, I think in terms of intent and the reason why it was a 10-foot side path on there, we expect it to be kind of like the street's a main collector of trails and pedestrian travel, and in the bike, it took me a minute to find this, but the bike pedestrian element that we have, the side path definition is 10 foot, which is, I think, why we Indian landed on the 10 foot for this cross section. Additionally, I think you can see that the side path is right up against the curb and gutter, and so with 10 foot being the standard, we also knew that there would probably be utility boxes and other stuff that's probably going to be sticking out here too. So even with that, at times we'll flex down more to 8 feet or so.
So Cam, just a curiosity, when you got curb gutter combo, what do you do with those utility boxes? 'Cause I don't see them on a curb gutter combo cross section. Does that make sense? When I've looked around town, I just haven't seen I see it in the front lawn of someone's home.
The dry utilities like power oftentimes are in a concrete vault, and they pour those right into
Oh, I see.
sidewalk.
Yeah, no, I do recognize that, which I'm okay with at that point, if we do that. I look at it and I think 8 feet would be good. Using that definition, I think that definition of 10 feet for moderate to high use was used if it was only a side path.
Yeah, that was my question too, if you could pull that back up, is that, because that's.
No bike lane.
Yeah, no bike lane there.
So I believe that would pull that off to create a lighter use of that trail because you've got the bike lane that's dedicated there. And it's going to be safer than a lot of our bike lanes because you got a 2 feet painted buffer in between there. A lot of our bike lanes, I don't even know on 11, North County Boulevard, there's not a painted 2 foot buffer or first east. So anyway, just some of my thoughts I would have.
So are we just kind of thinking we want to take 2 feet off of that and make it an 8 foot?
That would be what I would be in favor of.
So a 70-foot cross section?
Scott, tell me how you're feeling about having multiple what do you call it, this section of road?
The actual width of the right-of-way, our minor collectors are all 72 feet.
That's my,
And I would suggest, unless there's objections from others, that we keep that consistent. Keep the 72, that way all minor collectors all over the city are 72 feet.
And they don't all have the same process.
No, they don't, because a lot of them don't have, they have other things, they look different, but they're still the same amount of width.
That makes sense.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
but
just-
each travel lane.
I mean, you could do that, and does that increase our cost of what is required? I mean, does the developer pay for that 11 feet of asphalt? For that extra
Again,
foot?
they would only pay for the local crossroads section. If we widen the lane or if we widen this section, again, if it was due to growth and due to increased demand, then it would be paid for through a facility improvement. It would be cheaper to do 2 feet of asphalt than 2 feet of concrete.
All right, council, where do we want to go with this? Do we want to just stick with the 72 feet and use this?
I do now.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that last comment, or that is a standard throughout the city. So, with that said, is there any other questions?
Sorry, I kind of missed that, so do we say just sticking with it because of that, or we're looking at maybe Cam's suggestion to go with the increased travel lanes to 11 and taking the 2 feet there to keep the same 72 for cross section?
Chief, how big are your rigs?
Width-wise,
Yeah.
10-2.
I think I would rather keep the travel lane, like, I think the concrete, having those 2 feet on a concrete path might actually be more beneficial than the travel lanes.
The 2 feet instead of 8, keep it at 10?
Yeah,
10.
instead
Even
of,
though the rigs are 10 foot too wide, or wider than the travel lane that we've got around.
We have a median space that can also be used, and then
Oh, and there's a strike buffer.
a strike buffer that
yeah, it's wide.
When they're going for a
My
fire.
experience has shown that there's a inherent, this is gonna offend some people.
Do tell, do tell.
The increase in spandex is directly proportionate to how closely you ride along the buffer line, in my opinion. In my experience, I'll call it that. I live on First Tee, so maybe I'll throw that caveat there, but plus, you don't wear much spandex, I just, Jesse, so.
Unfortunately, I wear a lot of spandex.
I know you do.
On and off the bike.
Just one quick question. Do we just have an
I've been-
example of a typical cross section?
I mean, sometimes our travel lanes are 11, sometimes they're 12. But this, I mean, I am not an expert. Yes, I am. I'm an expert, and this is very, very wide. You've got 12 plus 20 plus, I can't do math, plus 14. That's really wide. Right. There's plenty of room for the fire truck. Don't look at me like that. There's plenty of room.
If the lights are going, do spandex usually get out of the way of the fire truck? I'm guessing they will.
Maybe not why, it's maybe a hard grab up the back end.
Pull over.
They grab onto the flashing light bar.
I really appreciate the comments that the council is going through. We, as a staff, we grappled with this over and over. We had multiple versions drawn, sent it back and forth.
A lot of the same discussion.
Van Millen's input, got Scott's input, got the chief's input, and so to see you guys go through this as well, this is our, yeah, the cross sections are tough. So we appreciate your thoughts on this, but we felt that this was the most appropriate cross section for this particular roadway.
And this cross section, the reason why we're trying to match it to the others, what does the others have? Is it the 8-foot park strip? Is that what they have on both sides? Is that what it is? I'm trying to compare this to say, okay, just because we have 72 everywhere else, I don't know if that justifies the reason to have it here. I would like to kind of understand what is it about that other cross-section. And if it is, if we have to do that, I'd be more in favor of maybe moving that 2 feet over the park strip and making it 8 like the rest of the park strips. And that's something that we don't have to maintain.
Bigger park strip doesn't benefit us at all.
What's that?
How does it benefit us?
We don't pay for the concrete and maintenance all over.
That's cheaper, but it's not benefiting us.
But we do have to maintain it. I mean, I think that
We
we
don't.
don't rock would be some
That
kind
would be
of.
up to the resident to maintain it. So we know what other park strips are out there. As we look at that, that's how we handle everything else. We said 8 feet so trees won't disrupt the sidewalks. If we've got that everywhere else throughout the city, why is this? If we don't like 8 feet everywhere else, then let's change it.
Yeah, we don't like, I
So,
don't like it.
so then why don't we go back to the regular and pull off 2 feet? It'd be debated.
I'm almost, we're going around in circles. I
No,
almost
no,
think
we're not.
we should just-
No,
I think
we're
we
just
should
going on
pass
target
this
here.
one. Here, I don't want to preempt everybody who's speaking or having concerns, but in the interest of time, I would like to make a motion.
Go for it.
I move to adopt the ordinance amending section 15.01.1526 of the American Fork City Code entitled Collector Cross-Section Side Path Median and Bike Lanes.
As much as I hate to see this end, I'm gonna second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Taylor.
Councilman Carroll, Councilperson Carroll, I said all I wanted to say. Good to have the motion.
I'm going to call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter?
Thank you, Mayor.
Aye. Councilmember Shelton?
Nay.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye. I think 1100 South warrants that cross-section the way it is. Things that we see going down in there, I think that's the right call.
Item number 10 is a review and action on an ordinance approving amendments to section 15.01.110 of the American Fork City Code entitled Easements. Go for it, Scott.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this item, if you recall, it was quite a while ago, 2+ years ago, I think, that we brought to you a discussion about the width of the easements, and then Sherilyn can fill in the blanks if I misspeak or if I'm thinking of something incorrectly, but sometimes when you get through and you start reading these, you find almost like a loophole or a place where it's unclear, where we would have to refer back to the old width of the easement, which was 10, and then we narrowed it to 5. This, basically, I'm just summing it briefly, this language clears up and makes it so that it's consistent. So, and anything I missed or should say different, good enough? Okay.
Mayor, then I would move to adopt the ordinance amending section 15.01.110 of the American Fork City Code entitled Easements.
We have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Shelton? Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Item number 11 is a review and action on an ordinance approving amendments to section 17.08.304 of the American Fork City Code entitled Project Streets and Sidewalks.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an item that actually was taken to the Planning Commission back in June, and with kind of clarifying again some language on that, some of which was, the old language was irrelevant. I have to confess to you, I have slept since June, and I'm trying to remember all of the details as to behind all this. And Sherilyn, I don't know if you can help me. I read it again and before the meeting to refresh my memory for what we brought to the Planning Commission in June, and I know we recommended deleting a good chunk of the part at the end that was talking about right-of-way widths that was either redundant or basically
Saying more than once.
saying more than once, twice, duplicitously so, but it was one that, again, we did take to the Planning Commission in June, and for some reason it just kind of fell through the cracks to bring it to the council this much later, so. A lot of it, again, was clarifying some language on widths of right-of-way that was redundant elsewhere.
I think it's just one of those items that you just, as you go through, you're just trying to clean things up.
We have a lot of those where we find things that aren't clear, and it's saying something twice in different parts of the code, but slightly different, contradicting itself, so. but
I
in-
can add a little bit of clarity to this.
Thank you.
We had a few projects, this really is, the section of code we're looking to take out was creating some difficulty in trying to match up cross-sections of right-of-ways. So you would have one project that's been there for years, a new project that has a greater right-of-way width, and trying to make the code work to put the new right-of-way width and the old width, or you have two old widths and a big segment in the middle. And it was trying to work with developers to make that middle segment fit the two edges, but our code was pretty restricted in our ability to do that.
Giving us the leeway to,
Correct.
particularly
So-
on some of these legacy roads, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And so we were looking to remove this, to really make sure it's not necessarily codified the specifics of, okay, if it's more than 50 or less than 400, it allowed the engineering department to work with developers to kind of work with that cross-section to make it fit with everything else.
Match what was there already.
Correct.
I received a unanimous vote from the Planning Commission, so Mayor, I would move to approve the ordinance amending section 17.08.304 of the American Fork City Code entitled Project, Streets, and Sidewalks.
I'll second. Motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Hunter. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, item number 12 is a review and action on a resolution adopting the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022 city budget amendments. Any questions on those amendments? We have Anna here. If you want to walk through them, if they're not clear in the packet. If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the resolution adopting budget adjustments for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022 budget.
Mayor, I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Item number 13 is a review and action on approval of a contract for public defender services.
Mayor, I'd like to reserve the right to make a motion in a minute, but I do have a conflict of interest because I'm in the same office as they are, and I know them personally.
And that's not a conflict, but I do appreciate.
It is, 'cause I know them.
And noting that for the record.
As long as you don't need him to represent you someday.
But it is not an official conflict, it would not be from taking.
You know what I mean by conflict. It may or may not be, but I'd like to move to approve the Public Defender Services Agreement with Stevens and Gailey, PC.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Barnes,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Taylor.
And that said, I do like them, and I think they are well respected in the community from everything I've gathered. I do see them at work, and I see the people they work with, and sometimes I tell them they're doing too good a job, that some of those people, Sherilyn, need to go to jail. But they say everybody's entitled to the right of defense, and they do the best they can for their clients, which is kind of a conflict, but anyway.
All right, I have a motion and a second.
Just a question I had on this. It looks like there was an RFQ that was put out. How many firms put in for the RFQ?
We actually just received one.
Okay, and how widely was the RFQ advertised?
That went out, I'm gonna have to look at that. I know we advertised that on our website. We also put it
So we're not on social media. I saw a posting out on social media when we did the general job. These are open positions. I would note that I was not overly surprised in getting just the one response. H.D. Gailey, who is a partner of Stevens Gailey, has been doing American Forks Complex Services for well over 5 or 6 years. And it was somewhat presumed, in fact, I had to repeatedly tell the court that it was not a done deal. It was presumed that when Sean Patton took the bench, HD would be filling that role. And so it didn't shock me because I think that other defense attorneys, other public defenders kind of saw that playing out and just kind of out of respect didn't put in for it.
Okay, awesome.
And they are well known, and I think they do 4 or 5 other cities.
Mr. Gailey
In our county.
has, yeah, so
I can't remember exactly.
I'm not sure what his partner, Mr. Stevens does. Mr. Gailey currently has Orem, Payson, is doing Cedar Hills and a few other cities, and is expanding his practice in order to service other cities. He will be servicing the regular court.
I just think it was good to be part of the public record process that was through, just in case anyone has any issues with who the public defender is, and that we went through good lengths to make sure that we have a good contract in place.
Okay.
The only question I have is in paragraph 2 where it talks about their fees. It sets a per month basis. And then in 3, it talks about the contract going until June of 2027. That's a 5-year contract.
Correct.
I don't see any inflationary thing in there, which I think is great.
I will tell you this, I did send this to Mr. Bailey. He had no complaints with it at all. So he was perfectly okay with this contract.
I had the same question with them because it has the opportunity to renew like 3 additional 5-year terms with no inflationary measure, and I was like, that's interesting, but I presume they had a problem with it.
Could it renew with some changes in it?
It could, and there's also an out clause for both sides, so it's more of a, we don't have to go through the process every so often. The renewal period is really just so that if we're happy with him, we can keep going forward with him.
All right, I will call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Excuse me. Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 14 is a review and action on a real estate purchase contract with Blue Peaks Holdings LLC.
Mayor, I move to approve the real estate purchase agreement with Blue Peak Holdings LLC.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Hunter,
Second.
second by Councilmember Taylor. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll?
Question I had on this, if I could, please.
Yeah.
This is where they eventually a PD location will be at, right? That's where we're going that way. We're looking at the police department. Eventually, I got it wrong.
So this would be a PF zone for this parcel.
Gotcha. Did I get that mixed up with the same AFPD South Plat
Yeah.
A? So it's part of the complex, but we're working just on that one area. Okay, just want to be very honest.
It's culinary well done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Item number 15 is a review and action on a resolution approving the voter participation area map as prepared by Utah County election officials. This is one of those things that we have to do before the end of the year. It's, from my knowledge, it's the old map. It's subject to change with the new boundaries, but currently we are just renewing the old map.
Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution approving the voter participation area map as prepared by the Utah County Elections Office.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Barnes. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Item number 16 is a review and action on an ordinance setting the time and place of the 2022 City Council meetings. We left Christmas Day off, so you know, instead of courtesy to everybody.
I think it's great. The only question I had on here, and hopefully this is an appropriate time to ask it, but kind of during COVID, we did, work sessions were broadcast as well. Now we kind of gone back and those aren't broadcasted. I've had a few people saying, gosh, I sure enjoyed the few that do going on. Or they want to go back and look at a topic and look at trying to further that transparency. Is that something that we could do with our work sessions, is to be able to stream those online as well?
I think it's something that we could talk to George about and see just what quality would be there and what the possibility of it, for sure.
The other thing I think I like it, well, I know I like about it is if one of us want to participate by Zoom, it makes it that much easier to do versus sometimes going in the old analog call-in numbers, sometimes very hard to participate. So I think that would help with members that are absent if we had it online as well as in a Zoom format already. Hopefully we figured that out, worked out the bugs through the pandemic. So I'd be supportive of trying to say that we could do that. And then the other
Just for work sessions, or you're talking about council as well?
council as well. I'm hoping we could do, and members absent here, but if we've got the Zoom capabilities there, you got the cameras and microphones, it's very easy to stream at that point, right? So it's maybe sort of a dual purpose of both streaming it plus allowing a council member that's absent to participate. And then I don't know if it's state law or how that works. The few boards I've worked on that we've gone the Zoom route, every agenda they put on there, that there may be an opportunity for someone to participate electronically. That way, if one of us is called out of town, that's the 7-day notification window or whatever it may be, that individual is still allowed to be able to participate. I know we kind of ran into that occasion. I'd love that just to be standard on there. Or if one of us gets sick, heaven forbid, and we don't want to show up hacking and coughing just because we want our vote to be able to count or discuss it, we can be able to do that. So I thought maybe that might be something to update to our agendas as we're looking at our meetings for next year.
I would be in favor of adding that too.
Likewise.
Yeah, on our, of course, most of the boards that I sit on, and the ones that you sit on, we're pulling from Salt Lake County, even the capital and some of them. And it makes, we still do key staff with Zoom just because it's convenient to have everybody in their offices. It's very productive. It gets a little bit tricky when you get a lot of people, but I think that's something we could look into for sure.
To be honest, North Point just covers from Saratoga, which we like to think is on the other side of the mountain sometimes, right? But I mean, Saratoga to Orem, regularly people, whether they're called out for jobs or whatever, just down. So, thank you.
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the ordinance setting the time and place of city council meetings for 2022 with the added adaptation for Zoom capabilities and our ability to join, I don't know if we need the same case of emergency, but join via Zoom. I would want it to always be assumed if we can be here, but in the case that isn't.
Okay. All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Carroll. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn. A motion by Councilmember Hunter.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Barnes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Merry Christmas to everybody.